The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My birth name is Erik Watkins, especially if you find me around the Twitter sphere, inside the arena, or what have you. My voice sounds a little bit familiar. You might guess because you might also know me from other W2M podcasts, such as This Week in the AFL, The Football 5, and Foxy and Squid. But tonight, I come to you not as the Squid, not as Eric, but as a long-standing man with a name birthed upon me in my old days of college. Now, granted, it has multiple meanings. Yes, it started with a rather impeccable porn collection. Not gonna hide from that. I mean, when you get to the point to where you have 6 terabytes, you have 6 terabytes. But over the years, it's kind of evolved. I've always had a knack of seeing things differently and analyzing things differently. So thus, the nickname viewer became very multidimensional. And tonight, I bring you the debut episode of my little solo shindig here, Point of Viewer. Now, it's going to be a fun hour, most of the time, and I'm going to run a bit of a disclaimer. For my debut episode, I'm going to start off a little bit heavy. If you happen to be listening to this on replay, feel free to go along, wait for some fun parts. You'll get some good ideas as to where. But for those of you who are fortunate enough to be listening live, if you're good and you stick with me, I more than promise you're going to get some very good treats at the end. Because one thing that you'll know, my life gets very, very quirky. Good parts of it are my own fault. But that being said, on we go. Something came to my mind this week when I was looking at the news. Mainly, as it was the pattern to a different extent in 2016, 2017 has provided a lot of death. Unfortunately, very tragic. This week alone, there's been 3 notable incidences. The recent developments of Aaron Hernandez, former Patriots tight end, the shooter in Cleveland, and the shooter in Fresno, California, which for the sake of sensibility and saying a fuck you to mainstream media, I'm not going to give their names or them really any individual credit or martyrdom or whatever, because that's the road that we have unfortunately chosen in this country. You do something tragic and senseless as shoot a bunch of people, all of a sudden you tune to places like CNN or MSNBC or Fox News and you see your face, your name, all these things plastered, and they'll find out every little bit about you, from past relationships to, if you really put it out there, your dream of owning a Slurpee machine. It's really not my style, because you're not a celebrity, you're not a star, you're not famous, you're stupid, you're ignorant, you're psychotic. Something at some point clicked inside your head, and I really wish you were somehow able to get help before it did. But to start with Aaron Hernandez. Now, I'm going to say this as a non-Patriots fan. As a matter of fact, with their culture of arrogance, pompousness, and who they've recently aligned themselves, thank you 45, I can't stand them. I do everything I can rooting for them to lose on a weekly basis. And I'd wish they had gone through the 0-16 season instead of the Detroit Lions. But Watching them lose key Super Bowls to the Giants did warm my cockles just a little bit. But Aaron Hernandez, with the team, created a respectably dynamic duo as far as a tight end combination with him and Rob Gronkowski. Well, Hernandez got himself into a little bit of trouble. Got hooked up with the wrong people. Next thing you know, he's up on murder charges. He's guilty, he gets life. Then, while he's sitting in prison, most likely rotting away, although from the looks of things in his other trial, another double murder, he was being taken care of, kept well, working out like prisoners do, so things weren't going as terrible as they could have been. Well, just in the past 24 hours up to this recording, that double murder was no more. He was acquitted. Crying tears of joy in the courtroom, and I'm thinking to myself, with all these things going on and all the rumors about connections and different ties with his other case, things are finally looking up. And who knows, through the miracle of our legal system, he could be out soon. Well, wake up, I go about my business, and I hear over the radio, he's found dead in his cell. The classic hanging by bedsheet. I immediately thought to myself, you just got a pretty big win. Nothing seemed like it was wrong. Why would you do that? I start thinking back to instances of depression, my personal struggles of those close to me, suicidal tendencies, and instances like Robin Williams and all those who are just, for one reason or another, sadly unable to cope, and unfortunately they take what's really the worst way out, and I'm thinking that's possible. But this is news. And in a 24-hour news cycle, you get details. You get developments. You learn things. And thanks to local media in Boston, Fox 25, WEEI, they discovered he had John 3:16 scrawled across his head in blood. Now, granted, I'm not an expert. I'm not an artist. But something like that is pretty hard to write on your forehead. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, you've seen that before, yes, you have. Made famous by guys wearing the huge-ass rainbow afro wigs, holding it up on a sign at different sporting events. Now, it means basically one thing, the verse itself. Whether you read the New International Version of the Bible, the King James Version, what have you. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Now, that's a pretty common verse. I admit that. And it's pretty simple, talking about, for those, especially Christians, Catholics, Episcopalians, Anglicans, those of that particular faith. You get it. But to me, somehow things don't necessarily click. Now, you can call me a conspiracy theorist if you want. I consider myself open-minded, and I dabble in. I try to learn things from all sides, but you can't write terribly legibly on your own forehead. And you don't do this just after you make kissy faces with your wife and daughter. And you don't do this after you've been acquitted of some pretty major charges. And the fact that, oh yeah, you're still on appeal for your murder conviction, which, thanks to Massachusetts state law, completely vacated. It is gone. Now, granted, he still had gun charges, so his record isn't completely wiped clean. Still would have tacked on 5-6 years, which would have meant 5-6 years, probably credit for time served, and he still would have been out. But because of this, because of the timing, as he was appealing, the worst of the worst goes away. And I wonder, are you that cowardly that you don't stay and fight? Do you get that depressed after such a big moment, knowing that you're still going to be rotting away for a little while? You might not think to yourself you're waiting to die. Or did something else happen? Now again, I don't know what's what. I heard a lot of rumors about, yeah, he might not have just been gay for the stay and liked sucking dick a little too much. Yes, all these connections and ties to people that were brought out in the rumor mill swirling during his original murder trial. I don't know. But I will say I'm suspicious. If I have any opportunity to do any sort of amateur sleuthing on my own, I might do that, because something isn't quite adding up in my mind. I'll leave that at that. As far as the sick fuck who, because he couldn't handle breaking up with his ex or his shitty job or doing whatever, that he claims to just randomly killed 13 people. And unfortunately, even though he decided to use Facebook Live, hey Zuckerberg, how do you feel about that? Not a good week for you. Not just having a stream up and leaving up a video of a pretty brutal gang rape, but now you've got this on your hands. And for your Facebook and your YouTube and other places that unfortunately broadcast the teen girl a couple months ago hanging herself, yeah, these video sites are pretty much taking a hit. Just want to lay this out there. Not just to folks like Zuckerberg and the people at Google and Alphabet, but as kind of a side note, you see these videos, do yourself a favor and don't really ruin your day. Reach out to someone, help someone. Because what are you really doing in this society by sharing it? You're giving multimillionaires and billionaires more money because of traffic and pay-per-click and ad stuff. And you're adding these sort of, in some cases, horrific things to the going viral mentality. Now, I'm not saying anyone should be inspired to do all of this. Absolutely not. You get yourself some help. You turn yourself in. You figure out by any means possible what you can do internally to stop yourself from any sort of harm to anyone, yourself included. I'm not a big fan of it, personally. Like I said, I've gone down some dark roads. I know people very close to me that have gone down even darker roads. Those are just dead ends. No pun intended. They don't get you anywhere. But Advice against sharing these videos aside, because really, if you're not doing anything to help prevent the matter, what's the point? But he goes on, reveals these streets, these allegations and his claims, and unfortunately, thanks to the blight that's hit the Midwest, in a city like Cleveland, there are so many abandoned buildings that even when you pinpoint down to particular intersections, it could take months to sift through and to try to verify anything. He decides to not only tell his boss he's not coming into work, but he goes out, finds a 74-year-old man, Robert Goodwin, minding his own business, coming home from Easter dinner. He makes the man say his girlfriend's name, and then just no fucking reason. None. Now, am I a big proponent of the death penalty? Not really. Be it through here in Florida, we had old Sparky, or lethal injection, gas chamber, firing squad, which, hey, you don't know if you fire that fatal bullet if you're on the firing squad, because they want to alleviate you of having that on your conscience, thanks to using blanks and in some cases blindfolding the shooters. But for something like that, this would have been completely warranted. Now, after his little adventure, which he decided to record and upload, and it was on the internet for 3 hours, pretty much cementing its legacy on all the social media sites, the manhunt became throughout the city, then through the state, then 5 states, and then nationwide. Finally, a McDonald's worker spots his car. Pursuit occurs, and he decides to take a coward's way out and off himself. Am I going to cry about it? Fuck no. Am I sad about it? Fuck no. If anything, I'm kind of pissed. He's the one talking all big and bad. Wanted to be on death row, giving all indications of suicide by cop. The sick fuck got what he wanted. You set up for the opportunity. Because guess what? He didn't have the complexion for protection. He would have made one false move, his car would have been riddled with bullets. He would not have survived. In this case, would there have been any protests? Any marches? No. Should there have been? No. But he doesn't even give us that satisfaction and goes all that way just to be a pussy? Just to bitch out? What's your problem? You set yourself up to get everything on a silver platter. We wouldn't have been mad. We would have been happy to see you go, because we have enough trash on this planet. We don't need you mucking up our gene pool. It's got to be filtered as is. So you spread your sickness and just to do that? So let me be one of the last people to say, fuck you. Just fuck you. You can't even... You couldn't even go outright. Give us the pride of seeing you be taken out. Give yourself your quote-unquote reward that you wanted so desperately. Fuck you. And to the shooter in Fresno, that you're so anti-government and anti-white people that you decide to go on a killing spree, These are the kinds of instances that get us into a 9/11. These are the kinds of reasons why a fat orange fuck is now commander-in-chief. Sitting on a plane, eating KFC and McDonald's, bragging about a fillet of fish or a Big Mac or taco salad or chocolate cake, which I wouldn't damn well touch from a kitchen with 13 health violations, including issues with seafood and storing ham at 57 degrees. Brags about that and then decides to drop bombs and randomly decides to conduct military raids that do nothing but kill primarily civilians. Yes, we dropped the mother of all bombs and altogether got upwards of 90 ISIS combatants. You know how many millions of dollars that bomb cost? And you want even more money. But as long as you have people like the Fresno shooter, it's going to be bombs away. It's going to be sending off to people in these never-ending wars, because you were the example of why large chunks of this country hate anybody with any percentage of melanin in their skin. So what favor are you really doing us? Yeah, you're gone. You're taken out. You could have just ended it at that. But no, you had to take others with you and enforce these stereotypes and reminding us of how fucked up we really are. This is what I wake up to in the morning. This is what I hear alongside news and traffic on my way to work. And I'm going to close out this bit because there's one main thing that's been up my ass now for some years. The evolution of the manifesto. Yes, you had the one man who pretty much wanted to have his own munitions department and sent a 161-page manifesto to the petulant in the White House. And all of these things, from Cleveland to California to videos of this type, they're manifestos. I was conversing about this. Is this really the perversion of the human urge to confess when we've done something wrong and we want everyone to know why? If we freely, and this goes back not just years, but decades, and you can Google them, do research at your library about the more famous of manifestos, but if we come to the point to where instead of just simply letting the world know what's on our minds and not do anything, or even better, do something proactive and peaceful to work towards solutions. We have a history of protests. There's more protests coming. We just had the Tax Day March, the Women's March. All of these marches. You have the Climate March coming up. They're proving to be effective. Everyone's out. Everyone's banding together. No one gets hurt, aside from an occasional clash, which is unfortunate even at that level. But are we at the point to where, while we still enact these forms of peace to create change, there are those among us that use those last seconds on the clock of their 15 minutes of fame before committing borderline atrocities is this what we've come to? Because we all see everything leading up to the shootings, be it in print, be it recording. What would be a normal smiling face, or with something hiding behind it, saying about days of reckoning or change, or all of this, letting us know what's going on in their heads, which you could say they don't function normally. They clearly show that. But is this where we are? Are we glorifying these and brushing away any peaceful forms? Is this what our media in mass has come to? If it is, then maybe we do need to embrace new media. Embrace these new forms of digital technology to where the playing field is even. And there are more messages of fun, peace, harmony. And when you sit and you laugh and you think, rather than dealing with this depression. Maybe if we did that, there would be no need for manifestos. There would be no need to see the darker parts of the human mind so often. We could take steps in getting better. Now, this next bit, I must confess, if you thought that was bad, I was going to label this Week in Misery, where I go on a little bit of a political spiel. But, unfortunately, thanks to 21st Century Fox wising up, a judge in a custody case wising up, and some flubs and good special elections, this first segment isn't going to live up to the hype. I'm sorry. Blame the news. Blame Hair Twiddler. Just don't blame me. I promise. If shit stays as horrible as it is, and from some of the top intelligence sources and those who have written books and served in the military for decades, we're not out of the woods yet. So, just keep that in mind. But, as the further part of the news, I was asked a question this morning, asking, did we really lose an aircraft carrier? All I could say at that moment, given the minor, I can't even call it a brain trust in the White House right now, because apparently you can trade IQ points for money. I mean, if so, I have a few to spare. Can I pay off some bills? Because if you could be that dumb but still be worth billions of dollars, I'd take it. I don't make a whole bunch of money. I'm considered smart by a lot of metrics. I mean, I'd be willing to negotiate some sort of trade-off for that. But here we are. And apparently, because a man with orange skin and a strange color of blonde hair doesn't know when not to share classified information by or to a reporter who really should have stuck to the financial sector to begin with and should have stayed on CNBC and tried not to advance because, well, she kind of looks in the weeds. But between sharing of classified information of what we're going to do and what we're going to send where and getting timelines wrong and getting your information from a network that has had to deal with settlements and losing tens of millions of dollars in ad revenue rather than people you hire and people around people you hire and people who actually, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. Yes, we for a while lost an aircraft carrier because we said we were sending it to North Korea, which There's really no need, and it was going in the Indian Ocean and going to participate in offshore military exercises in Australia. Now, for those of you who aren't entirely the best at geography, let me simplify. North Korea and Australia are in opposite hemispheres. Australia in the southern, North Korea in the northern, joining parts of Asia. So when you're talking about you're sending something one place when it's supposed to be going another, it's going in literally the opposite direction. Yes, you can get from North Korea to Australia one way. It would take a while, but you can get there. But when you're starting at a somewhat neutral point, you gotta turn left or right. And apparently, the man who, at least for this moment, is the leader of the free world, although I would tend to disagree, considering as how he would rather gush over food, get more trademarks, make more investments, squeeze every dime out of every country he can, and spend more time looking like he's wearing an adult diaper and having to worry about the wind blowing through his fat and his clothes on a golf course than, doing the job that some 50-some million Americans and a whole mess of Russians want him to do. No, he would rather be doing something else. He would rather be doing that. Swinging a club. Probably got scenes from Caddyshack all through his mind. I hope for the sake of the wonderful cast in the great movie Caddyshack, he doesn't, because that would be a disgrace. But here we are. And now they keep trying to cover it up. They say, oh, it's heading there now, and oh, don't worry about these tweets, or what he meant was this and that. I mean, are we really dealing with national security on Twitter? You're really declaring policy 140 characters at a time? Now, granted, I use Twitter for two things. Promoting myself, discussing sports, and a whole bunch of porn. I'll relate to that story later. But that's what I signed on for. Those two worlds intersecting because I joined Twitter in 2010 because of a bet thanks to a Dutch porn star. Granted, I would spend the next 4 years wanting to punch Andres Iniesta in the face, but I got to sit back and live my life, and Dharma eventually took care of itself. But that's what I signed on for Twitter for. I don't have aspirations of running in any political office or being a multi-billionaire because that would be too many fucking problems. But he clearly did. And this is what he decided to do. And sadly, more people are trying to explain him than to stop him. Keep that in mind as the evidence builds more and more as we travel on down the tracks into the tunnel to the white light that is invariable impeachment proceedings. Because, let's face it, do you really think this country could even survive in any form 4 years of this son of a bitch in office? Man who can't even remember to put his hand over his heart. He may not have one. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. But, yes. Dropping bombs and losing aircraft carriers. But in better political news, the tide might be turning. See, special elections are funny. That's why they're called special. Because of the few people that der Gruppenführer decided to elect, it kind of created some job openings. The only job openings he really wants to create. And those happen to be in the House of Representatives. One particular one is Georgia's 6th District, which is right near Atlanta, which is, if you know about Representative John Lewis, his heroic crusade in the civil rights era, his very thankful denouncing of Trump, this is near his neck of the woods. They had a special election. Now, how they do it is how I feel elections should be run to an extent. They have what is called the unitary election. Everyone's up for grabs. As many candidates, as many parties, what have you. Everyone gets a fair shot. They get to campaign, they get to debate, they get to do whatever. Then you have the election. If anyone gets a majority, 50% plus one, it's theirs outright. If they don't, in which this usually happens, then the top two candidates, irregard to who they represent party-wise, go to a runoff. Now this guy, Jon Ossoff. Keep an eye on him. He was a Democrat running up against 17 Republicans. That's not any sort of mistake. You heard that correct. 17 Republicans. And him. They had the election for the vacated seat of another man I would love to greet by smacking with a 2x4, Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price. They were vying for this seat. This election just passed Tuesday night. Nobody counted him out. Young guy, 30 years old, from a congressional advisor, supporting his girlfriend who's pursuing a medical degree at Emory University. He's like, you know what? I think we need to change things. There's too many old white people who look like various animals, and that ain't working out too well for the country. Let me go in and fix that. So, got his self-knowledge, raised himself a ton of money. We're talking 8-9 million. And decided to run for that seat. Now, no one expected him to really win. No one expected him to do well because the Republicans, and it's a stronghold, and it's a ruby red district. No Democrat has held it since 79. You had, oh God, Newt Gingrich. Yes, the man who wanted to colonize the moon. That guy. That was his seat. So people were surprised that he was polling as high as he was. In the 40s. Could come close. Then all of a sudden, you heard rumors and scuttlebutt about voting machines being stolen. Not votes. No hanging Chad bullshit like happened during my teenage years, and why I didn't get to watch an ending to an episode of Futurama for over a decade. Fuck you, Catherine Harris. No, the machines themselves got up and mysteriously walked off. So aside from that, aside from the typical smear campaigns, putting out some old, which is actually pretty cool videos of Ossoff back in his college days, Republicans got a bit of a scare. There were times, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, they couldn't call it. He was at 50%, and finally things settled down, and the Republicans breathed a sigh of relief. He finished with 48.1%, so now he's going up against Handel, I think Catherine Handel, whatever. I saw the last spelling of her name, and it's like, what the fuck is wrong with this family? Handel, opportunist, runs for seats, loses, wants to defund Planned Parenthood. I mean, look, anybody out there, you do your research, you have at her. Because I'm at the mood where I don't really give a fuck. But I know I should, because she's going to be the one now going toe-to-toe with him the week of my birthday. June 20th, my birthday is the 23rd. I say personally, good luck to him. Because for the love of God, we need more people like him. Not just in our government, but in our country and on this planet. I am very thankful that so many people are getting up together en masse and finally fighting. And now we're seeing some good results. 18 people, 17 Republicans, and he nearly beat them all in one shot. That gets me thinking. And finally, we get to say goodbye to an old man who said that people in Madison, Wisconsin worship Satan, and once read in an audio book, hey, why don't you put that pipe down and work on getting my pipe up? I am not making that up, by the way. And who also ruined my meaning of hot chocolate even more than when I horribly burnt my tongue on taking a sip of hot chocolate in high school. That was a very messy morning. Bill O'Reilly and Fox News, they finally broke up. Yes, after all these years and after $13 million in settlements for 5 women for sexual harassment and calls to a hotline and getting lawyers and losing 83 advertisers. A man who gives Australians a bad name in Rupert Murdoch finally conceded to his sons, which thank God know a lot better than he does. And O'Reilly, of course, will say, oh, they're unfounded, unsubstantiated claims. Bullshit. There's paperwork. But he's gone. And thankfully, the world and the news media, there are better places for it. Because I couldn't stand him. This smug, arrogant, forgets where he comes from and doesn't realize that whenever anybody says, we'll do it live, fuck it, it's thanks to him. No, he forgets all that because he makes on the order of $20 million a year. Got his golden parachute upwards of $25 million and is, well, in my prediction, not going to ride off into the sunset. He's not. So unfortunately, you'll have to hear from him again. He might decide to do a podcast or write another book, which will mean another audio book, which will mean cringing and killing of erections and vaginal dryness will spread all throughout the country because, my God, old and wrinkly and annoying and thinking you're hot shit, and you really think women who work for you will fuck you? I mean, I know I am not the best of prizes, but I have had multiple consensual encounters. There might or might not be some footage on a cell phone out there somewhere of a girl wearing glasses sucking my cock. If it were ever to emerge, I wouldn't deny it. I would have a hell of a story. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I know myself that and other footage is out there. I'm not going to run from it. But this is what I get for being a good person, for treating people with respect and knowing the right people. You, Bill O'Reilly, this is exactly what you get for being a dick. You get to join your herd of fat, middle-aged white men sitting on the couch reminiscing of glory days gone by as they eat God knows what, drink whatever piss they call beer, and shout at the TV screen. Because they know they were the shit, or they knew they were never going to be anything worth a damn. As they get older and fatter, and they dread visits to their doctor to get fingers shoved up their ass so that way they can make sure they don't have cancer, diabetes, heart disease, all these things that just face their mortality. You get to be amongst them now. And you get to reminisce about your hot chocolate, your dinners, your books. All of these things for you. Hope you can tell a story without spin. I hope you got all those years of some good practice. But, in better news, I'm going to wrap up with these last few minutes with the well-deserved treat to the listening masses right now. As you've heard me discuss on previous shows, I get myself into some conundrums. My history with the fairer sex is, to say the least, very checkered. And it gets to the point that thanks to social media like Snapchat and Instagram and Periscope, I meet certain people. I have interactions with them. There's usually a fair amount of nudity on both sides. And it gives me hope. My chief conundrum is categorized in my latest Google Sheet, which that app is a total godsend. Thankfully, I've received some good news. Now, I'm not going to divulge this good news right away for fear of a jinx, because a lot of things happen, but if news is good, I will be a much happier man, and hopefully within the next short period of time, be an even happier man with an occasionally very wet dick. Going to leave it at that. Crossing fingers, crossing toes, knock on wood, lucky rabbit's foot, all of the potential superstitions and placing good vibes out in the universe to make sure this happens. But in the meantime, I myself, over the years, have tried online dating, and I've created a few dating profiles. Way back in the day, I first dabbled on OkCupid, which actually led to the first girl I ever dated and my first ex-girlfriend. Then I decided to get with the masses and try the different hookup apps like Tinder and Plenty of Fish. So I got some terrible advice looking online about pictures where you really need to look away and writing all this stuff in details about you, and for a while it worked. Then life happened. Going through graduate school and then unemployment and now working in a cube farm for nearly 5 years. Life got in the way. And thanks to life getting in the way, my profile stayed stagnant. Even the newer profiles that I created. And, well, the stagnant profiles led to Dog Piss Jones in terms of success. So, over the past few days, a badass radio show that I listened to, The Matt Major Show. You can find them on Bubba Army Radio, Disruption Networks, noon to 3 Eastern, Monday through Friday. He and John, the billionaire Bellavia, said, you know what, fans? Show us your dating profiles. We help our guys, we'll help you too. We'll give it the once over and we'll tell you what we think. So me being me, thinking, well, my friends really haven't been able to provide too much help one way or another. Nothing really seems to be working. I would like to get laid much more often. Let me send my profile in. See what they truly think about it. Now, I knew well in advance they were going to bust my balls. I deserved it. It would be good content on the radio, so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to tell them to go easy or to do their worst or whatever. I'm just going to give them their links and let the chips fall as they may. Well, come the 2 o'clock hour of Monday's show, they did just that. And it got me to thinking, what the fuck was I thinking even back then? People texted in saying my profile was terrible. They said my profile was terrible, which admittedly it was. But they gave me a lot of sound advice. Swap out some pics. Have pics of just me. Clean it up. Have something interesting and witty to say. And they even gave me some good material on what to put on my profile, which I took to heart and used. So, I went ahead, scrapped everything, which was, in the case of my OkCupid, a good 5-6 pages worth, limited down to a paragraph or two. Bada bing, bada boom. Changed some pictures, took some selfies, which I almost never do, but hey, for the sake of having someone rub my balls, I'm willing to make that sacrifice. So I did. And a couple days later, I went ahead and I resubmitted. It was to my relief that not only were their changes effective, I got more women to notice, and things are getting better, but they took one look at it and they're like, oh my god, this was 100% improvement. Now they went over too, and unfortunately, because my boss decides to have the most god-awful timing and call a meeting about a new supervisor that we're going to have, I missed them talking about the third one, so I'm going to have to catch up with that, but it's very encouraging. And I offer this piece of advice to anyone out there. If you have a radio host or any other person that you don't really know, but you like, and you can get a feel for their opinion, have them look at it. Your friends are going to be biased. They're going to help you. They're going to be in your best interest. But they are going to be way too close to the situation. Way too close. So, you're going to have to take their advice with just a teeny little grain of salt and garlic pepper. Just a pinch, nothing more, nothing to ruin friendships over, nothing big, but if you have someone that doesn't have a dog in the fight, by all means, let them look at it and be prepared, because they will be honest and unfiltered as they should be. But if you can take it in good fun, you're going to get yourself somewhere. Now granted, I've had shout-outs on radio stations. I got girls give honest opinions, and starting to get more success. Now, even if this leads to more conundrums, which, knowing me, that's entirely within the realm of possibility, I don't mind that. Because I'm now giving myself a better chance. My horse is coming down the backstretch and it's charging. I may not win the Triple Crown, but hey, if I end up in the winner's circle at some point, needing to smoke a cigarette afterwards and admiring my handiwork and creating some more footage of my own, so fucking be it. Also, as a topic that's come up in past episodes, especially of Foxy and Squid, you know that have had issues as far as plumbing in my house. Thankfully, those issues for the most part have been resolved. Now, there's bigger issues as far as having to get a bunch of pipes replaced, but that's really out of our hands for now. But for the meantime, I'm able to reap the benefits of a brand new toilet, which is awesome. And instead of having to use a whole bunch of toilet paper, I decided in getting this toilet, I need to get myself a bidet. Much more efficient, much cleaner, and the dramatic drop in usage of toilet paper will help avoid clogging of said pipes that need to be replaced. And before they get replaced, they need to be snaked. And I realize I'm in the wrong business because I can just get out of a truck, drag some equipment, put a machine down to snake a pipe, and within 20 minutes I've made $150. Whereas in my current line of work, I make a little bit less than that in a typical 8-hour day. Now, funny thing about bidets. Their purpose is to use water to clean your asshole and the areas around it. But people don't tell you that you have to sit on the toilet just right in order to have the cleaning effective. Now, my first time using a bidet, I had the water to the right pressure. It felt weird as fuck. But it turns out hitting it on the hole isn't always the best thing. Now, in this case, I used toilet paper. It did the job. I was, as Outkast once said, so fresh and so clean, clean. Fucking love that song. But I realized that it was immediately going to take a teeny bit of adjustment. So I went to the store, got myself some flushable wipes, and then really sat, looked at my toilet, and realized I'm going to need to maneuver myself. So the next time when nature called, I was more than prepared. Sat a little farther back, let the bidet do its job, one flushable wipe, all was well. Granted, I am no big tree hugger person on the environment, but if you go down from 10 sheets of toilet paper to one flushable wipe every time you take a shit, trust me, that's a big savings. Because of that big savings, I encourage, work with your bidet. Use a bidet. It's not just some quirky French thing like film noir or topless women in commercials, although I am in favor of that. They're really going to help you out when you treat them right and they treat you right. Believe me when I say this, because you're saving a lot of money by just using flushable wipes, and you get used to the feeling of the bidet. You might shriek still once every 4 or 5 tries, but that will go down in time. And finally, I reflect on this time of year. As I record this podcast, it is the eve of 420. Now, because of my financial situation and issues with work, I probably won't be able to celebrate it properly. If, however, some connections come through, tomorrow could be a potentially very fun, very green day, which I would more than appreciate. But it's not just me wishing that I could sit at home on my couch with various Funyuns and Doritos, taking a bong rip and just saying fuck it all to everything and feel myself melting into my surroundings. It's also a very good time of year when it comes to sports. Now, there's 3 main ones going on. You have the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, you have the beginning of baseball season. Yes, you have other sports like lacrosse, arena football, which I discussed on another podcast. You have the other things going on, but Major League Soccer, again, another podcast. But these are the main 3 that I'll discuss here. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I pay attention to baseball. I'm just not paying attention to baseball right now. For example, I know my Tampa Bay Rays are 7-8. They sit 4th in the AL East. But even when they play their next game, they've only played a 10th of their season. A 10th. In baseball, you can't even judge a team until they're 20 to 30 games in. So, rather than sit and go on and implore Rob Manfred to shorten the season, to expand the playoffs, and enact the Global World Series with the winner of NPB in Japan, I'm going to save that. I'm going to put that aside, but I'm also going to put baseball aside. You're not worth my time right now. That's why I pay attention to the playoffs. And I'm telling you right now, I'm paying attention to the Stanley Cup playoffs even more. You had your defending champs, Pittsburgh Penguins, couldn't pull off a sweep against the surprising Columbus Blue Jackets, and why the city of Columbus, Ohio, has a hockey team, I still don't fucking understand. Gary Bettman, what were you drinking? What were you smoking? What pills were you taking? Can I get any of those? Is it a cocktail? Do I have to go all Walter White, Crystal Blue Persuasion and make it myself? I'd be willing to. I just don't have a chemistry background, so I'm more likely to cause an explosion, but it's a sacrifice that I'd be willing to make. What were you thinking in that decision? But nevertheless, they've gone past the measures of mediocrity. They've had a great season, thanks to John Tortorella, coach, Rangers, Canucks, Lightning. He's tasted success in his career, but they're fucking up now because they're not used to getting in the playoffs, especially in Columbus. Fucking Columbus. But you have that. You have the intrigue of going from a couple of years from where you had more teams from the state of California in the Stanley Cup playoffs than in the entire nation of Canada, to now flipping it around to where 5 out of the 7 teams made it in. The only teams that didn't were Winnipeg and Vancouver. Edmonton holding their own well against San Jose, whereas Anaheim's on the verge of a sweep against Calgary. Toronto against President's Trophy winning Washington, they have a lead. Montreal and the Rangers having another great series. Boston and Ottawa, another great series. Times are good. And I'm proud to say that one of my last bucket list items with sports, an all-Canadian Stanley Cup final, that dream is still alive. I have hope for that. And especially being able to stay up until 1 in the morning because the game is going into double and triple overtime. We're on the verge of that this year. I'm not going to complain. That's what playoff hockey is about. And I pay attention to that more than the NBA playoffs because aside from Toronto and Milwaukee, that's a series which, given Toronto and Milwaukee should be, the fact that the Celtics is the 1 seed are struggling to be 8 seed Boston. And we're not talking Joakim Noah and Big 3 in Boston like you had some years ago during that epic 7-game first-round series, one of the best playoff series in NBA history. Rajon Rondo, Dwayne Wade, an older man, against Isaiah Thomas and a bunch of other people. That's a series. Cleveland struggling to beat Indiana, but they're going to beat them. Up to Indiana's giving them a hell of an effort, but how many people are really going to stop LeBron James from getting back to the NBA Finals again? Where odds are he's going to face the winner of the Spurs-Warriors series. So, do me a favor. Thanks to my new X1 equipment from Xfinity, I get to see all the scores now during games. But for the NBA, leave me alone until Inside the NBA comes on and until you get to at least the conference finals. Then you earn my right of me giving a shit. Because I'm sorry, until you get rid of a few teams and shorten your own schedule and make some things interesting and not bitch about players resting towards the end of the regular season, you serve no real purpose to me. Especially right now. Come on. Adam Silver, Commissioner, I'm trusting you. You, like Manfred, can make some big strides in your respective sports. Unzip and whip it out. You know you can. You know you want to. Give the rest of the sports landscape the double tone, man. For my sake, and for a lot of other sports' sakes. Well, state of North Carolina, you're off the hook, because I'm out of time. This is Point of Viewer. If you think I'm batshit crazy, or you want to tell me off about something, go ahead, that's what Twitter's for, @SquidSportshead. I'm still waiting on Boston's gourmet pizza. If you heard the last episode of Soccer to the Max, I'm still waiting to hear back from you and certain things that you can do and certain things that you can avoid doing. But for anyone else out there, that's where you can find me on Twitter. If you want to read my musings about arena football, @inside_arena. If you want to hear myself and my co-host discuss arena football, @This Week in AFL for This Week in the AFL. Or if you decide you don't want to hear me, but you want to do something else, W2Mnet.com, the W2M Network. My awesome producer Sean, @W2MSean. Be nice to him. You can tweet me directly if I'm crazy. But if you feel the need to go to him, that's his Twitter. But I suggest you don't. Deal with me first. That way you can incur my potential wrath directly if need be. Or I can give you shout-outs if need be. I'm just saying. That's that. Good night. Good luck. Do your homework. And don't forget to be awesome.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.